around and disregard it. Strip you off the ground, show you what heart is. Standing strong and proud, nothing can knock it. Let's get it started. It's the hardest. Talk around and disregard it. Strip you off the ground, show you what heart is. Standing strong and proud, nothing can knock it. Let's get it started. Yeah,
get your boots ready. We're about to go on a trip where we wrestle, nobody settling or calling it quits. You're here for the grit, bet you this stuff is amazing. You're stumbling, welcome to the bump in the apron. Step into it, the hardest part of the ring. Here to bring fun, yeah, in this art he is king. It's the best thing, making sure you don't tap out. Don't go soft with the hardest podcast out. And it's not just another one, it's clear. Off the rest, in this content, none contest. Take the nonsense off the steps. You know it's nothing but pure gems when it's coming off the chest. Get it? Now it's time to sit and relax. Get your mind blown away, ain't no skipping this track. Have you paying more attention, no listening gap. Get everything I ever wanted, no giving it back.
Ooh, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Apron Bump Podcast. I'm your host, the hardest part of the ring, also known as Kyle. Got some Ring of Honor for you today. Man, oh man. Today, we are covering Ring of Honor Night of the Butcher 2002. And it's not Necro Butcher. It's not the East End Butcher, Shaw Samuels. It's Abdullah the fucking Butcher. Hoo-wee, man. Well, I don't know what I expected from this show, but hoof. See, Abdullah the Butcher is in the main event. And just to reiterate, the year is 2002. And he's in a tag team match. It's Abdullah the Butcher and Homicide versus the Carnage Crew, the team of DeVito, and my guest today, HC Loc. Man, oh man, I was pumped to, I couldn't have had a better guest on this. Like, literally, of all the people that have ever existed in the world, I could not have had a better guest for this show than the man who on this show got stabbed in the face with a fork no less than 100 times. And, like, legitimately, we could have just done an hour plus just talking about that match. How bizarre it was. Because, look, before I knew that he was going to come on my show to talk about this show, I watched the show, and I had every intention of just shitting all over it. Honestly. Because the main event... Look. It's Abdullah the Butcher wrestling in 2002. You're not gonna get a 5-star classic. This is not This is not Bryan Danielson versus Nigel McGuinness. This is not Samoa Joe versus Kenta Kobashi. This is Abdullah the Butcher whipping out a fork, barely being able to walk, stabbing HC Loc repeatedly in the head for maybe 20 minutes. So that was the last thing I saw. Again, that's the main event. That's where the show left me, and it was. Like I said, it was just bizarre. I didn't know how to think about it. So in the episode, we talk about all that stuff, how like Ring of Honor had been really good up to this point, and this show kind of fell flat in a lot of ways. And we kind of go into the reasons that it might have fallen flat. Loc gives some, backstory on some of the matches that happened, why they kind of floundered if they did. He has a lot of knowledge on the guys that were on the card, including the ones that I've never seen before personally, and provides a lot of good insight on not only this show specifically, but on Ring of Honor during this time period, Ring of Honor as a whole, and really pro wrestling as a whole. We actually even talk a little bit about the current product and how that kind of ties into what we saw in Night of the Butcher 2002. But I won't drag on this intro too long, but basically, in talking to Loc about this main event and about the show as a whole, it really made me appreciate what I saw more so than I did before talking to Loc. Him describing to me like why the main event kind of played out as it did, it made sense to me. And honestly, in a lot of ways, because it actually made me go watch it again, and I enjoyed it more after talking to him. So basically what I'm trying to say is that this show was a very, very strange one. But this podcast interview with HC Loc and our review of Night of the Butcher 2002 is probably one of my favorite ROH episodes up to this point. So really good stuff there. But outside of the main event, I mean, we have Xavier defending the ROH title against AJ Styles. And you know when AJ Styles is in a match, especially at this point, you know it's going to be at least really good. We have a little mini tournament to crown the new #1 contender for the Ring of Honor title. Got a little scramble action, as always, with these ROH shows. And we got Michael Shane, too. But yeah, like I said, HC Loc, you can follow him on Twitter and Instagram at HC Loc1, the number 1. All that info will be in the description of this podcast and or YouTube, wherever you're listening or watching. By the way, go check out YouTube if you're not aware. Video versions of these episodes, all of my episodes are up on YouTube at Apron Bump on YouTube. So go subscribe there, see our beautiful, beautiful faces. And yeah, let's get right into it, man. This is a good one. Ring of Honor, Night of the Butcher 2002, with myself and ECW and ROH legend, HC Loc. Yeah, how's life treating you, man?
Great, man. Super busy, but I'm lucky. Doing real good.
Awesome.
Got a couple of little puppies that you might hear.
Oh, yeah.
Hopping around here, but I'll try to keep them as calm as I can.
Dude, I got cats that I lock out of my room, but you might hear them meow and claw at the door. Yeah. So I'm with you. Don't worry. It'll be a little barnyard here.
Cool.
So you said you've been on the road a lot lately. I guess with things kind of loosening up around the world, it's probably good to get back out there and work.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I kept as busy as you could mid-pandemic, I guess. You know, as far as you know, there'd be empty arena shows where people are filming for their whatever they do, their YouTube channels or however they do stuff like that. So you gotta try to be careful. But I said, you know, at my age, I you know, again, like I said, try to be as careful as you can, but I was always conscious of, I don't have a whole lot of, how many next years do I have? You know, I don't want to take a year off. I can help it, you know,
right.
So I try to keep busy, but now it's pretty slammed. I've had more than 100 matches this year so far. So
that's awesome, man.
That's a real good year for me. So
yeah, that's why you still look good. So I'm glad you're still getting work out there. Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, it's going well.
But yeah, I mean, taking us back to Ring of Honor 2002, man. So you started. So I guess your first, big break was ECW, correct?
That would be, that I would call. I mean, like I did some enhancement work, like you know, and stuff like that. So I've been seen on TV a little bit, but definitely my big break would be ECW for sure. That was my first time really being featured anywhere.
Right. Yeah, I grew up pretty much just as a WWF guy, so I didn't really watch a lot of ECW back in the day personally. But from what I've seen of it and what I've seen thus far from Ring of Honor, it seems like there's a lot of parallels between Ring of Honor and ECW as far as like the atmosphere they try to create and like the intimate nature of it. Did you get that kind of vibe? Were there a lot of similarities between ECW and Ring of Honor?
Sure. Not so much with the style, but with, I would say, like with the passion. You know, and with and it was certainly with the fan base being pretty rabid and knowing what they want to see. You better give them exactly that, you know, type of the era. You know, but and certainly with the way it felt working there too. You know, it's those places, both those places. And I see there's that puppy now.
It's all good.
There's both those places, and I would say probably more so ECW for sure. But both of them, there's like, you feel like you're on a team, like a team vibe, rather than just like, I'm sure I have plenty of friends and coworkers and students and whatnot have gone on to work for WWE and whatnot. And I'm sure they're happy to be there and thrilled, but they're going to work and they're with their friends and they love their company, I'm sure. But it's like, you know, ECW especially, there's that team vibe. You know, it's we did an autograph signing, Tony DeVito and I did, couple months ago, one of those Legends Fest, and there was a bunch of ECW people there, and everybody's kind of congregated together because it's still that family, that team thing. It's really, really cool. It's even all these years later, it's funny. I was listening to some podcast that I don't even remember which one it was, but they brought up Raven from ECW. Now he's worked everywhere since then, but he's still Raven from ECW. You know what I mean? That's how it is. So pretty unique.
Yeah, because Raven, I mean, he pops up in Ring of Honor, maybe a year after this show, done TNA stuff, WWF stuff. Yeah, he really has been all over the place.
Yeah, literally every company. I mean, not AEW yet, but
not yet.
When we talk about him, it's still, that's Raven from ECW. It just feels that way.
Yeah, no, I'm with you for sure. Just talking about wrestling in general, I guess in 2002 was it's a very weird period in wrestling to me because the Attitude Era is dead. WCW, ECW, they're gone. And like British wrestling really isn't a thing like it is today. You have stuff in Japan, but it almost feels like there's not a lot of like strong companies in 2002. And I feel like that's kind of what Ring of Honor is there to try to do, is try to fill a void that exists. Did you kind of get that? Was that kind of the mentality?
That was, I believe that was the mentality, and certainly that's how it felt,
Yeah.
That started, from out of the fact that the folks from our video didn't have ECW shows to sell anymore. So it was, basically they were running shows so that they could have DVDs and VHS tapes at the time to sell, which was genius, really.
Right.
And they could tell they had their own. This isn't exactly what you asked, but they could tell by say we're selling a lot of videotapes, we're mailing a lot of them to Chicago. Now we know we better do a show in Chicago, that type of thing. So it was a really good business plan.
That's smart.
But yeah, it seemed really quickly. I mean, like the first night, to be honest with you, this isn't just a booking. This isn't an indie I'm doing the first Saturday of the month or whatever, however you do those things, this is like a company. This is a place to work. This is something. And, within the first couple of shows, there were even talk from like guys like Mike Johnson and folks that I've always respected online, journalists about how this is something more, it's kind of starting to fill that void of, especially, I don't know about WCW, but certainly ECW going away.
Right. Yeah. I mean, they were getting, Eddie Guerrero on I think their second show or whatever it was, and guys like that. So
yeah,
what's the first show? Yeah, it was first show. Yeah. I think he appeared at another show as well.
I'm pretty sure he did, but yeah.
Yeah. And so me personally, I got into Ring of Honor. It's more like 2006, 2007, and I kind of watched for a few years. So with this podcast, I've pretty much gone to the beginning, and I've watched each show in chronological order. So I'm kind of reliving like kind of the growth of Ring of Honor with fresh eyes, because I've never seen any of these shows. Yeah. And so I've worked my way through 2002, and every show has been at least good. Some have been really good. Some have been pretty good. This show here, now I don't know how much you remember about Night of the Butcher 2002, but I guess I'll ask you, what are your memories of this show just in general?
Honestly, beyond what I was doing, because it was a pretty big deal, not a lot. Off the top of my head, I probably couldn't tell you any of the other matches that were there. I mean, probably, they'll ring a bell, but we were on last and we were pretty focused on that, that
right.
Day. So I honestly don't know how much of it I saw, to be honest with you.
I'm going to be honest. I don't blame you at all for not remembering anything, because outside of the main event, everything else was pretty because like I said, I've loved all the Ring of Honor I've watched from 2002 thus far, but this show was not, it wasn't bad. It was just a lot of there wasn't a lot of heat with anything, the other matches. It's almost like the crowd was there just to see Abdullah the Butcher. It's almost like they were there just to see the gore of it all, and weren't that crowd that kind of was there to see like professional wrestling per se. But I guess, we'll talk about it in the main event later, but man, that was, there's a lot to get into with that. I have a lot of questions to ask you about that, but as far as like a show, you said you didn't watch a show, which is okay because, like I said, like there's honestly not a lot of meat to the bone.
Yeah.
But I'll start. Actually, we'll start because we'll go through it, from start to finish. But I want to start with your promo at the end. I don't know if you remember this at all. So this is after the main event. So you, DeVito, are backstage. You're bloody. You got fork scars in your forehead. You're just sitting back there recovering. And then you're like putting over, this is what DeVito and Loc are about. We want to make everybody as miserable as we are. We have crappy jobs, naggy kids, and ugly wives. And you said, we have ugly wives. And DeVito's like, hey, bud, he's speaking for himself, not me.
Yeah.
That was one of my favorite parts of the show, honestly. But yeah, because there was not a lot of good promos in Ring of Honor at this point, but you stood out as one of the better ones.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I kind of stumbled on that, really. I'll be honest with you. It's something that I've cultivated, and really tried to become good at, as you're supposed to do with your craft, whatever it is you do. But kind of from the jump in Ring of Honor, I did a couple of promos in ECW, and they went better than expected, even by me.
Yeah.
In front of live crowds and whatnot. But then coming into Ring of Honor, I cut a promo the very first show, and Doug Gentry, God bless him, he's gone now, but he had filmed that, and he was like, "Well, that's the best promo on this show." He goes, "Never." I go, "Wow, man, thanks. I didn't know. I'm just doing my thing." And then the match, it probably wasn't on that DVD, but it must have been the show before Night of the Butcher, when there was we did kind of a lengthy promo talking about that match coming up, and I was really, really proud of that one. That one was good. I don't fully remember the one you're talking about, but we found a good vein there with that whole hating our crappy lives, and we just don't care. We just want to beat people up, and didn't even care if you beat us up. We just wanted to fight, and that was our big. And I'll tell you right where that all came from. That was talking on the phone with a booker, at home, and at the time, my kids were little, and I probably had dogs running around like you can hear now or something like that. And there was just wild in the background, and I'm like, "Would you guys come on the phone?" And they're on the other end of the line going, "Hey, everything all right there?" And I remember just saying, "Oh man, these goddamn kids," joking, stuff like that.
Yeah.
We get to the show the next week. He goes, "We're gonna do something with that. You're the Al Bundy from Married with Children. That's what you guys are gonna do about your home life and everything." And then we found that vein, and we did some really fun stuff with it.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. It really fit because you guys, coming from ECW and then the hardcore style that you guys had, it really fit what you guys were going for. And Ring of Honor at this point, it's a lot of because like I said, this is right after the Attitude Era, so it's almost like Ring of Honor is trying to be just wrestling sometimes. Yeah. Sometimes it feels like too nuts and bolts and not a lot of emphasis on characters. Yeah. Which is a theme of this show, really. But you guys, like I said, stood out because it seemed like you're putting effort in getting your characters over, which ultimately is going to get people to care about the matches.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And that's probably why a lot of matches on this show suffer, because it's just a lot of guys in tights and with long hair and not a lot to it. But
that's and this is what I tell my students all the time. And that can be great. A great wrestling match is great, but you need more than just that. Unless it's a dream match scenario type of thing. Like recently we've been talking about in the last few weeks, Bryan Danielson versus Kenny Omega, right? You don't need a lot of promos building that up. You don't need weeks of, vignettes to do that. That's a special attraction. But the only two things in professional wrestling that ever have or ever will draw any kind of money, sell any tickets, are a special attraction, i.e. a dream match, The Undertaker, Andre the Giant, or personal issues where you're understanding the characters and you're understanding why I want to fight this guy, and why it matters who wins or who loses, or why it matters that I'm coming back to get my revenge, or why it matters that I'm sick of my crappy wife and loud kids at home and I just want to beat these people up. You have to give people a reason to be invested in, It all comes down to, of course, you have to have a good in-ring product, but you have to give people a reason to care what's going on in the ring, besides other than just the fact that, these guys are good workers. There's got to be more to it than that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that's really kind of illustrated with the opening match. So, I'll go through the matches. I know you didn't watch the show, but if I spark any memories, feel free to interrupt me, of course.
Sure.
But the opening match here, we got Michael Shane versus Jeremy Lopez. So Michael Shane's a guy that I cover TNA on my podcast too, and I've watched a lot of his work in TNA. And there's just something about him, because obviously the cousin of Shawn Michaels, and that seemed to be his gimmick. Like, hey, this is my cousin. And I feel like when you have that gimmick, you've just pigeonholed yourself to being, oh, he's like Shawn Michaels light kind of deal. And I feel like that's always, at least as me watching him, that's kind of the impression I got. Because he's a guy that's technically sound, I'm sure. He's a solid promo. But there's not a lot of, his matches don't seem to have a lot of steam to him for whatever reason. Do you have any memories of Michael Shane?
Sure. Great dude. I really liked him a lot, and he came around ECW and he got a little bit of work, and that was, I don't, no disrespect to him, but it's clearly it's like, well, if we use Shawn Michaels' cousin, then, one hand washes the other, who knows what'll happen, stuff like that, and that's no disrespect to Michael Shane, Matt Bentley. He's a good dude, solid hand, but you can only be less than, greater than, or equal to, right? And you're not going to be greater than or even equal to Shawn Michaels ever. So if you're leaning into the comparison, you're set up to be less than of forever. So I mean, it's a tough. I mean, it's acknowledge that you're Shawn Michaels' cousin. Sure, that'll probably help a little bit, but I would be everything but Shawn Michaels in the ring. I get a little long-winded when I talk about wrestling. I apologize.
No, please. No, I love it.
But not to stray away from that, but on that point, I was teaching a seminar a couple weeks ago, and one of the guys was really good, but he came in a red, white, and blue singlet, right? And he was in decent shape, but not great shape. And he was a good wrestler as far as amateur wrestling, but he's not an Olympic gold medalist. But who is Kurt Angle, right?
Right.
So if you're going to do that style, and you're going to wear a red, white, and blue singlet, you're going to make me think about Kurt Angle. So, you better look as good as him in that singlet, or you should wear something different. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's kind of my long-winded way of comparing that to Michael Shane. If you're leaning into these comparisons to Shawn Michaels, you're starting from behind, and you're never going to win that race. Never going to win that. Oh man, he surpassed Shawn Michaels. That's, you don't say that about a whole lot of people ever, so.
Right.
So, yeah. So that I would agree with you on that.
No, yeah, especially because he does all of Shawn's moves. He has a lot of similar mannerisms. I feel like if you're going to do that, you should go the route as like Randy Orton has gone. He's obviously, it's not a secret that he's Bob Orton's son, but he's a totally different animal, like a totally different style. And I feel like if you ask most people today, I think most people would say that Randy Orton has surpassed what Bob Orton did. Would you agree?
Oh, sure. Yeah, sure. Yeah. I mean, Bob Orton was fantastic, but Randy Orton's one of the best in the world. And again, I mean, that's probably a perfect analogy, because everybody knows Bob Orton's kid, but he's not trying to be another Bob Orton.
You don't think about that when you're watching Randy Orton wrestle, per se.
Not at all. Yeah, not at all.
But you do think about that when Michael Shane wrestles, and he's facing Jeremy Lopez. I'm not super familiar on Jeremy Lopez. He seems very similar aesthetically to Michael Shane. So it's almost like I was watching this match and I was like, wait, who is that guy? Who is that? Because they look like they could be brothers.
Yeah.
But like I said, this match, even watching it from the DVD, there's a lot of cuts in this match. It was a decently long match, but there were still cuts in it. So I don't imagine what they cut out. I guess there was a lot of dead air in this match beyond what there already was that they showed. Yeah. But at the end, Michael Shane hits the Sweet Shane music, which is a super kick, of course, and then the picture perfect elbow. So all of HBK's repertoire he's busting out. He does very good. Like, he has a beautiful elbow. And that gives Michael Shane the win. They shake hands at the end. Michael Shane's the heel here. He's kind of shaking hands. Like, that was the thing in Ring of Honor. You shook hands after a match. But Michael Shane's kind of doing it in like a dickhead way. Like, yeah, you better shake my hand. So it was like a very slow match that didn't really have a payoff or stakes. It didn't have a lot of steam to it. But yeah, I feel like this might be, a match that might be more appreciated maybe nowadays. But back then, we'd have a crowd waiting for Abdullah the Butcher to stab you in the head with a fork. Maybe that's not what they want.
Yeah.
But after that, we get something a little better, a lot better, actually. We get CM Punk versus Colt Cabana.
Yeah.
So this is so these guys had previously wrestled each other a bunch in Chicago, but this is their first meeting in Ring of Honor. In fact, I believe this is Colt's debut in Ring of Honor here. This is only Punk's like second or third match in Ring of Honor at this point. And in this match, I mean, the first 60 seconds, there's already more moves than the entire previous match. Completely different style, really fast paced. A little sloppy at some points, but these guys are both still like pretty new to the business, and I'm sure maybe nervous. Ring of Honor, even at this point, is a pretty established brand. So
you were well aware if you worked for Ring of Honor that everybody was going to know about it the next day. So if not, even if it wasn't on national TV and it wasn't mainstream, for guys like you and me and these hardcore wrestling fans are really following it and understand the business or think they do or want to. You're in those days, you're gonna know about everything that happened at Ring of Honor last night, the next day, for sure. So there was nerves for sure, and people wanting to do all their do all their cool stuff or whatever, and sometimes that would get a little sloppy.
Right. Yeah. And that was kind of a common theme, not just in Ring of Honor, but I feel like early 2000s indie wrestling, it was like all about who could do the fanciest moves. And some may argue that's kind of still prevalent today, I guess. But we can get on a whole tangent about that. But but overall, really fun match. You got some fun offense from these guys. You got a young Colt Cabana out there doing Asai moonsaults to the outside. We get like a tornado snap suplex from Colt Cabana, a reverse Hurricane Rana from CM Punk. These guys are going all out for these guys. Definitely a lot more heat, and the crowd's definitely invested in this match rather than the last match. But towards the end, Colt goes for the Colt 45, which is a double underhook backbreaker of sorts, like over the shoulder. And I'm not sure if this is like them making the best out of a botch or whatever, but I liked kind of how it played out because Colt like tried over and over again to try to get him up for it, but it kind of looked like Punk was struggling. I really like that when it looks like there's like a struggle to lock in a move, and then Colt finally hits it and gets the win, but he does it after like trying over and over again to lock it in. It really adds like a sense of realism to it.
Absolutely.
That could have been their intention, but Colt Cabana gets the win here. And this is just one of many matches, probably thousands at this point, matches that they would go on to have. So But Punk versus Cabana, you have any favorite clashes between those two?
Yeah, I mean, those guys became staples, obviously, and they got over so quickly. And did some type of tag scenario against them. I think it might have been a scramble match or something, but we this is not to get real long-winded on this tangent, but I remember definitely in Philly doing a scramble match with them at one point where there'd be 4 teams or whatever, and Cabana started with somebody, and I always kind of booked those scramble matches. We had like the formula of how we wanted them to go, and I not to say I called everybody spots, but I always kind of laid it out how we're going to go. And the plan being that Colt was going to start whoever he was. He'd do a few seconds of something. Somebody else would come in. It's basically like a lucha rules match, right? Those was what those all were. And they were just going for what seemed like forever, in the beginning, and doing this is meant to be that kind of, people talk about wanting to get their shit in. Here's the match to do it, because this is the highlight reel match, the fireworks. And they're doing exact opposite of that, and they're going forever. And the crowd's getting a little restless on it, And I finally, Punk was opposite corner of me and DeVito, and I hollered over, I go, Punk! Hey, Punk! And he finally looked up, and I go, hell with this shit, you want to go have a beer? And everybody in the crowd laughed. And he goes, after watching this shit, yes, he hollered back or whatever, And then they picked it up, and then we got a great match after that. But
That's hilarious.
Yeah, but yes, and I gave CM Punk a black eye that night. Sorry, Punk.
Oh, he probably deserved it, right?
Hard to tell. If not then, probably some other time.
But, he's bound to at some point.
Yeah.
But yeah, those guys have a really good match here. Punk is winless in Ring of Honor at this point. But after the match, Gary Michael Capetta gets in the ring. And he basically announces that there's going to be a rematch at a later show. And whoever wins that match is going to get a contract with Ring of Honor. So these guys, I guess, technically aren't contracted with Ring of Honor.
Right.
So the whole premise is whoever wins that match will get a contract and is going to be able to get flown into these shows rather than driving from Chicago to Philly or wherever. Mm-hmm. And Punk, good guy CM Punk's like, okay, if I win, I'll forfeit my plane ticket and we can both split the gas to get here. And then Colt Cabana's like, fuck that, I'm taking the plane ticket. So I guess it's like building tension between those two, which is in hindsight pretty I guess it's foreshadowing, but so good little deal there. It sets up future matches between those two.
I always like the Ring of Honor would do stuff like that because that sounds real. You know what I mean? That we would do stuff like that. Like I can remember, guys taking a van up from Atlanta or whatever to work in Philly, and that was the story. If the winner gets flown next time, well, that's great. That's you know what I mean? That's believable. It's I like that stuff.
Yeah, title belts are fine, but like pay for my plane ticket. Like you said, that's like a realistic element of stakes to it, which I did. Yeah, that's a really good point. Mm-hmm. But speaking of stakes, so this next match is so there's on this show there's like a mini tournament of 4 guys, and the winner is the number 1 contender for the ROH title. So this is the first, I guess, semifinals of the tournament. So we have Paul London versus Easy Money. Mm-hmm. So I had never heard of Easy Money until I watched this show. Do you have any thoughts on him?
Yeah, he was in ECW when I was there. And,
yeah.
He was a character, legendary. He was famous for dressing as himself for a Halloween party and wearing the ECW toy belt to it during those days. So we busted his balls about that for years. But he's a good dude. He made a lot of the boys gear. Actually, he was good at that. So probably a lot of stuff you saw on that show he made. But he was very athletic. He did that. I don't know if he did it in this match. I don't recall, but he did that shotgun lariat that
Hangman
Page does now. So that was the first time I'd ever seen that, and I don't know that I've seen it since. Probably I have, but he was doing that in ECW. And
really
athletic dude, and for as big as he was, I mean, he's not Andre or anything, but he's probably 240, and over 6 foot, and he could do a lot of stuff. He's very talented. Yeah, for sure, he is. And at this point, he's a pretty big dude, but like you said, he's flipping all over the place. It's funny you brought up the Adam Page stuff, because not only does he do that buckshot lariat flipping clothesline, but he also does the dead eye like reverse pile driver that Hangman does. Yeah. So it's like, man, this is like a precursor to Hangman here. Yeah, I stole that move from him and done it a lot of times. Yeah, but you did it better though, right? Yeah, better than him. I don't know about as good as Page, but don't sell yourself short. Yeah. But yeah, and then he's facing Paul London, which I mean, we can talk for years about Paul London and how great that dude was. Dude. He's just the coolest dude. He offered a couple weeks ago to come whenever we could work it out, come teach a seminar for my students at my school, and I want to really try to work that out. But he was a dude who came into Ring of Honor, and like by his second match, he was super over. I mean, just he was like his first match. I'm pretty sure nobody knew who he was. He was just a guy that Rudy Boy Gonzalez student, Shawn Michaels student, that came in. Nobody knew who he was at all. And I want to say like by his second match, they were standing up for him. Like it was just the stars aligned just right, and he was the right talent in the right city, and it was like a rocket ship. It was awesome to see. Oh, I bet. Yeah, and at this point, probably the best feud that Ring of Honor has had so far is the feud between him and Michael Shane.
Because that there was a lot of elements because they both came from the same school. It was kind of like a civil war within that school, the Texas Wrestling Academy, like two different mentalities. But so it was a really good storyline, and they had some pretty good matches. There was a street fight they had. It was one of the first shows. And that's where like the please don't die stuff started. At least it was the first time I saw it.
The ladder in the corner, right?
Dude, the fact that Paul London is still just walking around is incredible to me.
Yeah.
Just flipping off ladders, landing on those steel barricades back first.
Yeah.
Like,
dude's
made of rubber. I'm telling you, man.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But this match is it's kind of a shorter match. It's pretty good for the time they got though. Like I said, Easy Money's busting out all of Hangman Page's moves in this match, but also he's a big dude flipping around there. A lot of impressive offense from him. Really hanging with Paul London as far as that style goes. But towards the end, Easy Money goes for like a pump handle slam type of move, but Paul London slips out and then hits like a leg trap DDT out of nowhere for the win. Yeah. They shake hands after, but really good match. And like I said, number one contender trophy this is for, so had stakes to it, had, fast pace, so can't really ask for more than that.
Yeah.
And then the second semifinal, I guess, for the number one contenders trophy. So we got Chad Collier versus American Dragon Bryan Danielson. So again, just like Easy Money, I had never heard of Chad Collier until I watched this match. Any stories or thoughts about Chad Collier?
I don't have a lot of stories about him. I always thought he was good. I wrestled him in Rochester sometime after this a little bit, and he definitely was a good on the mat guy, definitely a good technical type of guy. As I recall, having said that, I don't, and maybe he's done a lot, but off the top of my head, I don't remember him being back too much after that. I think he was around a little while, and I don't know, did he ever go to TNA or anything like that? I don't know if he did anything else after. So,
not that I'm aware of. Yeah. But I mean, I'm not like entirely surprised at that, because this match, like I can enjoy a technical mat wrestling kind of match. Like I watched, American Dragon face Doug Williams a few shows ago, and that was great. That was a 30-minute Iron Man match. I was into every second of it. Yeah. This match right here, Bryan Danielson versus Chad Collier. This is about 20 minutes long. And there was really, the crowd was not into it at all, first of all. There's zero heat to it. Maybe is that their fault, or is that, the kind of crowd that's there? Who knows? Yeah. But no one really knew who Chad Collier was. It seemed to me from watching this. And we were talking about earlier about how maybe sometimes independent wrestling at this point maybe relied too much on the technical kind of, the bare bones nature of wrestling, and they maybe had too much faith that was going to get the crowd excited. But to me, like, this match didn't really have a lot of heart to it per se. Like later in the show, we get Bryan Danielson versus Paul London, which again, it's a very technical match, but it has like intensity to it. This match to me didn't really have a lot of intensity. At no point, I wouldn't say it was a bad match. Like, it was technically sound. Like, the match is premised because Chad Collier, his finisher is the Texas Cloverleaf, which he was trained by Dean Malenko. I believe commentary said. Yeah. And he's actually kind of looks like Dean Malenko. He's kind of like a bulkier Dean Malenko. Very similar style, and has the same finisher. So he's kind of working the leg of Danielson throughout the match. They're fighting outside. He's throwing him into barricades, all sorts of submissions. Towards the end, Chad hits like a pop-up powerbomb onto Danielson, locks in the Cloverleaf. But Bryan gets to the ropes, and Bryan eventually fights back. He counters one of Chad's moves, hits him with an elbow to the back of the head, and hits a brutal dragon suplex for the win. So Bryan Danielson gets the win. Like I said, Bryan Danielson, he's just as good here as he is now. He's probably better now, but he was very good back then too. Yeah. But this match, you said you didn't watch the show. Like, I kind of envy you, because this was very long match with, I guess, it had a purpose. He's like, who's going to face Paul London later in the show? But at no point did it really grip me at all.
Yeah, I can see that. There's that character aspect, and Dragon, you can even tell, set aside the Yes Chant or anything that he's done in recent
Mhm.
years. You know, he has this innate charisma about him.
Yeah.
It's sometimes hard to put into words, but he's always a guy who's always wrestled like a star. He just looks like a
Yeah.
star in there, you know. And sometimes if you're just a good wrestler, even just a great wrestler, you know, if you don't have that little, you know, not to say anything negative about Chad, but, you know, maybe that might be the issue type of thing right there. If you don't have that little bit of that it factor to tie into with your great technical skills, you know, it's limiting, you know, for sure.
Yeah. And I forgot to mention this. So, like in the beginning of the match, commentary, I think it's Gabe, they're like building up Chad Collier. And that's one thing they did well. Commentary is kind of like if a guy's debuting on a show, they'll like run down his resume and like where he's been, stuff like that. But I guess at some point, Chad, I guess he had like a tryout with WWE, or he was with their developmental system, something along those lines. And then on commentary, they're like, oh, I guess they don't appreciate mat wrestling over there. I mean, yeah, he's not the best promo in the world, but, you know, they're like they're literally burying his promo skills. And it's like, okay, maybe that's why he didn't really.
Yeah. Hindsight, I don't know if that's a great selling point to do on commentary, but, you know, I guess, you know, they were also, and this was kind of a Heyman thing too, you know, it's, and especially in Philadelphia, you know, you don't want to lie to the fans, you know, type of thing. So they respect you more for pointing stuff like that out. So that might have been the theory there. I don't know. Yeah.
It was very commentary. It was like they were trying almost too hard to not be WWE, to the point where they were like trying to be the opposite, like complete opposite.
Sure. Yeah.
And I guess they would figure it out eventually, but yeah, here was a little over the top and probably did more harm than good to Chad here.
Mm-hmm.
But after this, we have, you kind of talked about this type of match earlier. We have a scramble match, 4-way tag team scramble. So we have the team of Jay Briscoe and Amazing Red versus the Hit Squad versus SAT versus Special K.
Yeah.
And you kind of brought it up, and I've kind of talked about it on the podcast before myself. It seems like these matches are kind of just designed, like, throw psychology out the window. It doesn't matter. We don't even like selling and registering and tagging, like, doesn't matter. Just go out there, do your fancy moves, get the crowd to pop for your moves, and then go home. Is that kind of?
That's 100% was the theory to those things. Yeah. At least consciously, especially if I had my eye on it, you know, not to say I was the ultimate boss by any means, but you know, I would always still have the emphasis on selling, you know, to some degree, you know, wherever you could. But it was very much like, all right, do your thing, get out for the next constant motion type of thing. As I get older, I don't like matches like that, which, you know, really, but it's, and especially, you know, not to get on a tangent, but they can be so egregious now when you mention, especially like the not selling and these huge, in today's day and age. And I love wrestling today. I've recently, you know, I've got to visit it at AEW, and what a great company and great people, and they do great. But there's some folks there that are green, and some folks there that like a certain style, and everywhere. I'm just not just there. Yeah. But, you know, we see guys today do big moves that, you know, the Undertaker would have been stretchered out for, and they don't even go for a cover, you know, and that drives me nuts. But so I wouldn't, if I had anything to do with it, I would try not to let stuff like that happen in those scramble matches as far as that goes. Mm-hmm. But there would be, like, you know, roll out or get pushed out, something like that, so somebody else can do something else. And it was basically, and it's funny that these are the words we use, because at those times I was the first guy that they ever hired to be an agent in Ring of Honor, which was a pretty cool little thing on my resume.
Awesome. Yeah.
So and I would describe these matches to people like, these are fireworks shows. Go out there and it's just like, it's like if you picture a tag team match after the hot tag and everybody blah blah blah, things break down. That's the intent of this whole match. And now I use that same word, fireworks, to explain to my students and the people who take my seminars of basically kind of what not to do, you know. And you know, the quick version is, you know, the 4th of July comes around, going to the fireworks is awesome. That's awesome, you know, to come see it.
Yeah.
But if the same fireworks show or a similar one happens every Saturday night, I can miss it because I know it's cool, but it's, I just saw that and I can see it again next week. But if it's what we talked about before, if there's a personal issue or something big at stake or a special attraction, well, I gotta see that because it's only going to happen this one time, So that's where like moves just for the sake of moves, especially when you're not selling, especially when you're not going for a cover, blah 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 blah. All the things that makes me sound like an old guy for saying, well, I lived this long, got to be an old guy for a reason. I learned things. I'm right about that. So
right.
It's funny, I never thought about it before, but I give talks against fireworks shows in wrestling now, and that's how I used to describe it to people when we were trying to book those matches. But it was a different time, we're trying to be innovative, and so I give it that.
No, yeah, it's definitely, in the context of 2002, I guess, like innovation was such like that was the type of moves you saw in these kind of matches you weren't seeing anywhere else. Nowadays, right. you might see a Canadian destroyer on AEW, but you're also seeing Canadian destroyers like at the shitty place down the street. Like everybody's doing them.
Yeah.
But even like watching this match with 2021 lenses, like some of the stuff they were doing was crazy. I mean, especially SAT. I've become a big fan of SAT and watching through these shows. These guys were so innovative, like pioneers of so many moves and kind of tag team kind of elements that are still used today.
Yeah.
But so in this match, Joey Matthews is a part of this match, aka Joey Mercury. And he's probably my favorite part of this because you have all these guys that are like either in their teens or their early 20s. You got Joey Matthews, who's still a young guy at this point, but he's probably like, I don't know, 24, 25. Yeah. But he's basically portrayed as like the old guy yelling at, like the old veteran kind of guy because he's surrounding himself with all these like young indie guys. So you have like Special K. They'll be doing, these crazy flips to the outside. You'll have SAT doing these so complex double team moves and submissions, like Briscoe, Amazing Red. You have the Hit Squad just killing guys with burning hammers and lariats, and then you have Joey Matthews will just come in and slow the match down with like a rest hold. So the crowd always boos. It's such a funny, like there's one spot where basically everybody's taking a turn. Like a guy will be laid out in the middle of the ring, and somebody will come up from the top rope and try to hit a splash and they'll miss. And then he'll be on the ground. And then somebody else will come from another corner and do another move. And then they do this like 4 or 5 times in a row. And then Joey Matthews just goes like to the second rope and does like a Jerry Lawler fist drop. The crowd hates it because they want to see the flips. They want to see the, people breaking their necks on the ring aprons. Like, I don't know what they want to see. Yeah. So there was that element of psychology in this match. But other than that, like we talked about, it's fireworks. And when you kind of look at what surrounds this match, I think it's kind of structured in the show pretty smartly because the matches we talked about thus far, they weren't really setting the world on fire. And, some of the matches afterwards don't really either. So this kind of stands out amongst the other matches on the card, which I think is a good thing because you're not getting too much of a good thing. Lots of crazy spots in this match. You have Jay Briscoe goes for the Jay Driller pile driver on the 2 Deranged. But then Mafia just comes in and spears both of them, just obliterates them. Amazing Red hits an F5 onto Joel Maximo. I guess Brock Lesnar's a big thing at this point. So a shout out to him. There's one point where Jose Maximo does rolling pile drivers, which to this day I still haven't seen this before. He does like a pile driver. It's kind of like the 3 Amigos suplex combo, but he's doing it with pile drivers, which is incredible. But the finish, I don't even know how to describe the finish with words. SAT wins, but basically one of the Maximos, I think it's Joel Maximo, has a guy in like a gory special, and then Jose hands another guy to Joel, and he puts him in a Boston Crab. So he has like one guy in a Boston Crab while also having a guy on his back in a gory special, and they both tap out. So fun finish. SAT gets the win. I believe this is a number 1 contenders match as well. So there are stakes to it as well. So all in all, Scramble match, I think it went and did what it was destined to do. And you have SAT as the number one contenders here. And SAT is super over at this point. I don't know if you have any recollection of that, but the crowd loved SAT.
Yeah, they always did. Those guys were, I always liked those guys. I think they're coming back. I'm sure they are, actually.
Awesome.
So they were good dudes, man. You know, as you continue to watch the Ring of Honor stuff, and I think it must have been after this, we did the Scramble cage matches later, which would, and then we had platforms on top of the corners of the cages. So
oh man,
the guys that could do that stuff who could do that. I actually built those actually. And the spray paint marks are still on my garage floor. But but speaking of SATs, I always had all these ideas, and I kind of aged in anyways, like I said. But I had shit ton of ideas always in those days, especially, and so when we got together to talk about that match, I said the SAT. I said, "Hey, you want to do your Spanish fly off the top of the cage? We'll all catch you." He goes, "I was hoping you were gonna say that," and they did. It was awesome, you know. And so yeah, those guys are awesome, fearless too, man.
Crazy bastards, yeah.
I just saw the other day. I think they sent it. I sent it to them, or they sent it to me, or something. We tagged each other on mine somehow. But it was a scramble we did with me and DeVito, SAT, and Trent and Johnny, the backseat voice, and it was just AJ Styles. He was supposed to team with Paul London that night, but he couldn't make it. But we did a scramble match like that, and that was a really fun one. And it makes me think of that because I was the one taking some of that SAT shit.
Oh no!
But they were good, man. They were smooth, and you know, I really enjoyed working with them, man. They were up for anything, and even though they had those cool moves that whatever, they take all of your stuff too, man. They just wanted to have a good match.
Right. Yeah, it's funny because, like I said, I started from the beginning, and I had never really heard of SAT until watching these shows. And when I first saw them, I was like, oh, it's kind of like bootleg Super Crazy times 2. Yeah. But as time has gone on, as I keep watching these shows, like they've won me over. Like they're one of my favorite teams to watch. So it's good to hear they're still going. I'll watch wherever they wrestle 100%.
Good.
But then after that, I guess it's like intermission at this point. And at this point in the show, they show some highlights from dark. They had a lot of dark matches on the show, which I guess were shown on the TV show, which I have no recollection of this. Do you have any memories of what was it called? I made a note. ROH High Impact TV, the TV show. I guess it was a local Philly show.
Yeah, it might have been. We didn't have it for very long, and I don't remember when it started. That also might have been like, I don't know if that would have been a web series in those days. It might have been early for that. I don't know. But we didn't have TV for long. And then later, I was trying to push us to get it once Kerry Silkin took over and everything like that. And he said, nope, that he wasn't going to spend any money on that. That was a failed experiment, he thought at that point. So it was probably, that might have been something local. There was that, what was it, Sports Channel 46 or something? Somebody's going to hear this and tell me I got it wrong, but something like that out of Philly. I think that's where ECW was on, and later CZW. Gotcha. There might have been a Ring of Honor show on that for a while. I don't really remember. But I remember the name of that show now that you pointed out, but yeah.
Yeah. I had no idea they had any form of TV show, but yeah, they had, how many is it? 5 dark matches before the show even started. So you had Mace versus Paulie Normus. You had Bryan Danielson versus Marcos.
Yeah, I remember that one.
Yeah. They showed a few highlights.
Marcos was my student, so that's so I do remember watching that one. Yeah, for sure.
All right. You got Angel Dust versus Paul London. You got the Hit Squad versus the Outcast Killers. Diablo Santiago. Your students also.
Yeah.
You got AJ Styles versus Jimmy Rave. So a lot of the guys that just named, they had like at least like in the case of Bryan Danielson and Paul London, they had 2 matches on the main show. So that means they had 3 matches in one night.
Yeah.
Plus just the fact that, I mean, they're probably not super long matches, but this is 5 extra matches that you're adding to the live crowd, watching. And from what I've heard, maybe you can confirm this. I've heard that Murphy Rec Center can get a little toasty.
Oh God. Yeah. They'd get miserable in there. it was hot and stuffy and all that stuff. But those fans were so. If you were giving them a good show, of course, you're in South Philadelphia. You know, I mean, that's trial by fire for sure for pro wrestling, or for any sporting event, but definitely for pro wrestling. But those people loved Ring of Honor, and they loved that if they could see another one or two Bryan Danielson matches, they were all in. You know, I'm sure that as long as they were digging what they were seeing, they weren't, looking at their watch too much,
Right.
Depending on the night, depending on the show for sure. I didn't remember us doing 5 pre-match shows, but I definitely remember Bryan versus Marcos for sure.
Yeah. But then after that, we have Divine Storm. So the team of Chris Divine and Quiet Storm versus Jeff Starr and Shockwave.
Yeah.
Any memories of Jeff Starr and Shockwave? I don't know if I've ever heard of these guys before this.
I brought those guys in for that show, to be honest with you.
Did you?
Okay. Yeah, those were friends that I'd worked with on the indies a lot, and they had I remember this match not being very good. And it was definite styles clash type of thing there. I think that Shock and Jeff were coming at it from a very sports entertaining American style pro wrestling type of thing, and they were coming up against guys that were green. Everybody was green, but that were green, but also more into the I'm going to kick you hard and I'm going to stretch you a little bit more, and that's what Ring of Honor was. That was took a little getting used to for me too. I mean, people talk about ECW being blood and guts and violence and blah 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 blah. Ring of Honor dudes are kicking you for real. They're putting you in safe places. You know what I mean? You can hit hard in safe places, and they're putting you in holds, and you better have stretched out before this match because they're putting you in holds. I remember there being some real timing things. One thing specific I remember was they were going to do something and do the old go for the boot. The other guys were going to catch it. They were going to do the backflip, land on their feet, and they just chucked them. Timing was bad, and Jeff and Shock didn't get over, and I mean, literally didn't get over, and figuratively didn't really get over either. I really thought they were onto something because I thought I'm going to bring these guys in. I vouched for them, and there's no heat, but I don't think they came back either, but they're really good talents. Jeff still goes once in a while, and Shockwave became, if you ever read about Shockwave the Robot, that's him now. And he did a few Japan tours, and he does some stuff now where it's kind of goofy, but he's got LED lights all over him, and he's an actual like robot. He's doing all this shit right in the ring, but he's got a whole routine that he does or whatever. It's funny that that's this show in particular, but I remember them being super disappointed afterwards, like they had a chance and kind of blew it. And those things do happen, unfortunately.
Yeah, because I've been watching these shows, and I knew who Divine Storm were, and ultimately this match kind of is almost a squash for Divine Storm. They win the match. But I feel like if you came into this match cold, like if you just turned this match on, you didn't know who any of the people were. Jeff Starr and Shockwave, just like physically, aesthetically, they look like the stars of this match. Yeah. Like they look like the guys, and Divine Storm, they look like the enhancement guys. So I see what you're saying as far as like what their potential was, because they looked, and maybe it is like kind of the sports entertainment kind of vibe, I suppose. So maybe that was the issue. That is a good point.
Yeah, I don't mean that in a goofball, just like that American WWF probably still the time, maybe style of working, a little bit, type stuff, as opposed to what Ring of Honor, as well as South Philadelphia was, where, all right, little fat, little hard, a little faster, a little bit different. And having said that, if the other team had worked a little bit more like Jeff Starr and Shockwave, I mean, not necessarily their style so much, but slowed down and worked with them, that had potential to be a really good match. Because I mean, I would still vouch for those two guys to get a shot somewhere. You know, they were good, but they didn't have a great match that night, and I don't think it was all their fault. You know, there's 4 guys in there, and I think it was everybody's fault. But I wish they would have had another opportunity after that, but I don't think they ever did.
Yeah, because like you said, even like Chris Divine, Quiet Storm, they're both pretty green in their own rights. So, and like you said, it takes 4 to tango in this case. And the ROH crowd, the WWE, they didn't want WWE. Ring of Honor wanted something. In fact, they wanted literally anything that wasn't WWE. So, so yeah, like I said, Divine Storm gets the win here. But honestly, that's not really the story of this segment, because after the match, CW Anderson hits the ring. And so this is this whole deal here, because it's so funny to see like the 2002 vision of like making it look like a shoot, like make it, because they were like portraying this like this wasn't a part of the show. Like commentary was like, oh, make mark here to delete this from the DVD. And so CW Anderson gets in there. I don't know if he was like with the company at this point. I know he had wrestled a few matches in their early shows. I don't know if he had a contract or what the deal was. But basically, CW Anderson gets in there. He beats up Star and Shockwave, gives one of them a spine buster because he's an Anderson after all. Gary Michael Capetta gets in there and he's like, hey, what the heck are you doing here? That's his words. That's a quote. And he says, CW Anderson grabs a mic. He says he's back in Ring of Honor. Even though this piece of shit promotion buried me online. I guess, I don't know if this is true or not. Maybe you remember something like this, but he calls out Gabe Sapolsky for burying him online. I don't know if it was an interview or an article. Do you have any recollection of that?
I don't, but I would be willing to bet that if there was a little friction there for real, that Gabe told him, hey, hit me with that while you're out there, you know, like, because those fans for sure would know, you know what I mean? And Gabe was business, you know, he would definitely be like, yeah, man, I can hear him saying, hey, hit me with that thing. You know, I pissed you off in that interview or whatever the case was, you know, whatever that was, you know, that, man, lay it into me out there, you know, because the fans will know that you mean it, type of thing.
Yeah. And like the whole, like a lot of the locker room comes out there and like carries CW out of there, brings them backstage, and then the camera follows him backstage and Gabe's there. He's yelling at CW. He's like, get the fuck out of here. Get the fuck out of here. Like really over the top. And it's really, really dramatic actually. But I don't know if this leads to anything or what the case is, but seems like they're building CW for something, I'm presuming.
I don't think that he had a real long stay there. I know he did something probably after that where he was going to maybe, well, you said you've been watching him. So if it happened before, then you would have seen it, but he did something where he wanted a team with any jobber. That's what it was called. Because it doesn't matter who it is. Give me a team with any jobber. And I put like hell for that to be Mike Bell. Do you remember who Mike Bell was by any chance?
Yes.
He actually teamed with me a couple times in ECW and teamed with DeVito in WWE when they were doing enhancement work. But he was the guy who famously Saturn lost his shit on in the ring in WWE.
Right. Yes.
And did all that stuff. So, and then it just happened. And everybody's like, so everybody's talking about how a jobber, and I hate that word, but some jobber got beat up by Saturn, whatever, blah, 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 blah. And that was our friend Mike Bell. I'm like, this is his spot. Bringing him in to say any jobber, let it show him be him, and then let him kick ass somehow, something like that.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
That's brilliant.
That can be like a rebirth for him type of thing. But I wish that would work out too. But sometimes they have good ideas, at least I think. but so maybe they're not that good idea. I don't know.
No, I support you on that. Yeah, Mike Bell, he was big in the WWE as an enhancement guy. He was big in the WWF in the mid 90s, right?
Yeah. Sweetheart of a guy too.
Yeah, he's big into like fitness and stuff, right? He has all like the straps and
he's passed away now. His brother's owns companies. His one brother has done really well with making different documentaries. So a lot of them about bodybuilding and powerlifting, steroids, and that whole world. and his other brother Mark.
Mark Bell, that's what I'm thinking of. Yeah,
Mark. Yeah, he owns shit. I'm not gonna think of it right now. It's terrible, but he's in the weightlifting game. You know, and he's and it looks like he's doing real well for himself financially and business wise as far as that stuff goes. So,
yeah, the Slingshot. I don't know if that's the brand name.
That's what it was. Yep, that's him.
Actually, I have one laying around here somewhere. Yeah, so big Mark Bell guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, the jobber thing. That was, I think it was like the first or second show where that happened. He teamed with, what was his name? Elax. Yes. Yeah. I forget who they faced, but yeah, it didn't really amount to anything. It was kind of like a one-off thing, and then CW left, and then he's back here now. So.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if he came back much after that. I don't remember him being around a ton.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. But after that, we have the finals for the number 1 contenders trophy: American Dragon Bryan Danielson versus Paul London. So these guys have wrestled each other a bunch of times in Ring of Honor over the course of history. There's one like famous match. I forget which show it is. It might be like 03, 04. But this is one of their first matches in Ring of Honor, and like we were talking about it, like with Dragon versus Chad Collier, like it's like one of those. It was like a technically good match, but it didn't really have like an intensity to it. This match right here had lots of intensity, and it was so evident that we haven't seen it thus far in this show because it just stuck out like a sore thumb. It was so good. Like watching these guys, I could watch these guys wrestle all day.
Yeah.
Even the young versions of them, because it's like even like. Because you have like the striking, like you said, people are hitting each other for real in Ring of Honor, and that's evident in this match. But even like Dragon will just put on an abdominal stretch on Paul London. It's like he's trying to rip his head off.
Yeah,
it's like
awesome. Yeah, I can remember him finishing a guy with that one time. I think we were in Chicago or something like that. And he would do stuff like that just to see if he could, and he could. You know what I mean? Too, if he could make it work, and he was over anyway, and he could make anything like that make sense and be and just right, and abdominal stretch. I remember him using that as a finish. That's all. That inspires me even to remember that right now. Like this weekend, I want to see if I can pull that off. Yeah,
I would believe it. If I was in the crowd, I'd be at least, you'd have at least one guy cheering. But yeah, it's honestly not even that long of a match. I mean, this is each of their third matches of the show. Yeah. But every second of it was action packed, and every move had intent, really laying it in. The selling was great. One point, Bryan hits like this huge back suplex from the top rope onto London. He locks in the cattle mutilation, but Paul London's able to get to the ropes, and they work their way towards the finish. And I really like the finish. And this kind of goes back to like the struggle of a move kind of makes it worthwhile when it happens. So Paul London, he's on the top rope, and Bryan keeps trying to knock him off. So he'll run up there, but Paul London will like forearm him and knock him down. And he does this like 3 or 4 times until eventually Bryan runs back up, and Paul London's like elbows, headbutts, like everything you can do. He finally gets Bryan laid out on the mat, hits the shooting star press, and gets the win. So he like really had to work to get Bryan down and out for him to be able to hit his shooting star. Hits it beautifully, as Paul London always did. And Paul London, I guess, is the number 1 contender for the ROH title. So by far, no disrespect to you, I know you're on the show, but this is my match of the night personally.
It would have been mine too, I'm sure. Yeah. Hard to top those two.
Yeah, absolutely. But now we have the ROH championship on the line. Xavier, the champion, versus AJ Styles. And by the way, Xavier is accompanied by Simply Luscious, and AJ Styles is accompanied by Alexis Lurie, aka Mickey James.
Yeah.
Man, a lot of future stars in here, and a lot of stars that didn't really amount to maybe as much as they thought they would. Particularly Xavier. Like, what do you think kept Xavier from reaching a higher level than he was?
I'm really not sure. He's my brother's. He's Tony's student too. He's a DeVito guy. He had a great look, had talent, had athleticism, had balls. I can remember before there was ever a Ring of Honor, him doing some 450 splash to the outside through a table before anybody ever put those words in the same sentence ever. You know what I mean? And, and I think that maybe, and I'm only saying this because, you know, you asked me, and if I got to come up with a reason, it might be the promo deal. You know, it might be that, is there something that, is there a little bit of that star quality? Type of thing.
Do you think he was too, like, kind of along the same vein as Jeff Starr and Shockwave? Do you think he was too, like, WWE, for lack of a better term?
I thought so for that setting. You know, I mean, but I mean, the WWE is still a thing. I mean, I don't know why he didn't get a shot there, but
yeah, that's true.
I along the lines of what you're saying, I remember thinking and loving the guy. Don't get me wrong. You know, he's DeVito's kid, and you know, and I knew him a long time, but and he's gone now too. But I do remember thinking that he was I'm not gonna say the word bad because he wasn't. It worked like a charm, but he was a curious choice for champion to me, and for what that company was trying to be. You know, first champion is low key, and then DeVito told me, he says, they're putting the belt on John tonight. And I'm like, bullshit. And he goes, okay. And then I think, you know, and then it went to Joe and all those people, you know, and it was like kind of that whole, one of these things is not like the others, you know, and that's not always a bad thing by any means. But yeah, he was a little bit more, I'll say mainstream style. I don't mean there's nothing negative about that, as opposed to this upstart, you know, hybrid style of sort of strong style before we called it that.
Right, like a sports entertainment style he kind of had. Yeah. Whereas, like you said, the crowd there wanted strong style type of stuff.
Yeah.
But you brought up the fact that he was a curious choice to be champion, and I agree with that in a sense. But also, there's this. So the underlying, I guess, the main storyline going on at this point is the prophecy, which of course is led by Christopher Daniels, and then you have Smo Joe involved, Donovan Morgan, Mark Briscoe, and then you have Xavier. And it's almost like Xavier, like the only reason he's champion is because of the prophecy. It's almost like he's the champion to kind of represent what the Ring of Honor fans don't want. It's almost like he represents, like, lack of a better term, sports entertainment. But then you have like the guy like Smo Joe, which takes the title off him. He's like to a T what Ring of Honor wants. Strong style. Yeah. Like, I guess that was the mentality going into it. But like you said,
I agree. And like I said, it's the whole, like, one of these things is not like the others, and that's not always a bad thing. And I don't think it was there. It was just a little, well, I didn't see that coming. And you shouldn't always see what's coming, you know, type of thing, you know. So but yeah, he's a guy that I could have seen bigger things than for other companies, you know. And again, is it promos? Is it something like that? I don't know what there was, but he had all the tools, it seemed.
Yeah, his promos, from what I've seen, his promos weren't the best, but
well, you got to do them to be good at. That's the other thing. I mean, it's you know, I tell my students, you know, I don't care how dumb you feel, you know, when you're in the shower, when you're in the car by yourself, when you're doing, you know, talk, talk, and look at your watch or your car radio or your phone and say, I got to do a 1 minute promo and talk, you know, you got to just do it, you know? So, oh, well.
Yeah. But he's facing AJ Styles here. And obviously we know what he would go on to be, still going strong today. Yeah. And even at this point in 2002, very early in his career, but still incredibly polished in everything he does. Like a lot of Xavier, I don't want to, you know, have it come off like I'm shitting on Xavier or anything, but like a lot of Xavier matches kind of come off like, you know, they don't really resonate with me personally. They don't really grip me at all. Yeah. But this match, AJ Styles, you know, he had a great dancing partner, Xavier did, with AJ Styles here. And right from the beginning, Xavier, so he's like the cocky heel. So he slaps AJ, and AJ just goes berserk because I guess Xavier is trying to coax him into getting too emotional. But AJ eventually he hits the Styles Clash like 5 seconds into it. But Xavier is able to like roll towards the ropes and get out of it. Luscious pulls him out. And we mentioned the prophecy. It should note that Daniels, Donovan Morgan, Samoa Joe, none of them are in the building on this night for whatever reason. So really, it's just Mark Briscoe and Luscious that are backing up Xavier. And Mark Briscoe is still 17, so he can't physically get involved because they're in Philly. Then you have Simply Luscious, who is, she's not going to stop AJ Styles. So, but Luscious getting involved prompts the referee to kick her out. So now it's like a one-on-one scenario, which is what Xavier doesn't want because he's thrived off of all the interference from the Prophet. That's why he's champion, is because people will interfere in his matches. So now he's pretty much like, oh shit, now I got to face AJ Styles one-on-one. So I like how they set that up in the beginning. The match is pretty solid. You have Xavier hitting some like springboard bulldogs and really good spears to the back of AJ Styles. You have AJ Styles. He hits this like crazy like deadlift back suplex that looked really snappy and good. AJ's so good, man.
So good. I always say that pound for pound, he might be the strongest guy I was ever in the ring with. Because like stuff like you just said, he could just muscle a dude or catch a dude. And these weren't all super large men, but some of them were, at least everybody was in that, 180 to 230 range, and you just catch dudes or throw dudes and, and you felt, you knew you were safe because he had you, and he's, no pun intended, but he's a phenomenal athlete and is, he picked the right moniker. He just is a man. And years later, decades later, I say all the time, and I will always say, regardless of who you think the best in the world is right now or anything, I think that of everybody we've seen over the last decade, and I'm including Kenny Omega and Punk and Randy Orton and all those, when you're talking about the best of all time, I think you got to you talk about Shawn and Ric Flair, and I think you got to have AJ Styles in that conversation. I really do.
100%.
He's that good.
Yeah, for some reason he gets overlooked when it comes to those like greatest of all times discussion. But when you think of the longevity he's had, I mean, we're watching a match. This is a match from 2002. He's still going strong in 2021. It doesn't seem like he's stopping anytime soon. And just the way he's evolved his style over the years, he's not obviously doing the high flying stuff that he was here, and not as much at least as he was here in TNA. But he evolves his style, and over the years, his promos have gotten a lot better too, because he can't rely on his physicality as much as he gets older. So his promos, even like recently in WWE, have been very good.
Very good. Yeah, when he was doing that stuff it was 2016, and he was going back and forth with John Cena. I'm like, man, he's got everything now. Because now he's got the promos too. The character work. Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
no weaknesses in AJ Styles. Well, other than his leg, because Xavier attacks the leg in this match. And at one point, so what happens here? So Xavier goes for a Rana off the top rope. AJ counters it into a Styles clash off the second rope, but he hurts his knee in the process. And this allows Xavier to kind of recover from the Styles clash. And basically he picks AJ's leg, ties it up into like a jackknife pin of sorts, and is able to get the quick win out of nowhere based on the fact that AJ pretty much injured his own leg. So that's kind of, solidifying Xavier. He's like, he just got lucky, and he's kind of gripping onto this title by a thread. So ultimately it would have been cool to see AJ as ROH champion, but I kind of like how this match panned out.
Yeah, I like that booking a lot. It gives your champion a win, but also, keeps your challenger very, very strong, and kind of let your champion still be a little bit of a chicken shit heel because he had to sneak it out, I like it.
Yeah, for sure. But boy, man, that brings us to the main event. Oh man. So we have a Bunkhouse tag team match. The team of Homicide and Abdullah the Butcher versus the Carnage Crew, the team of DeVito and my guest. So you said you remember this match, right? I assume you do.
Very much, yes.
Unless you got it beat out of you with a fork.
No, there's lots of stories with that fork, I'll tell you. So
yeah, I would just love to hear your thoughts on this match, because I was awestruck watching this match. I didn't know what to think about what I was watching.
Neither did I. Yeah, I got lots of thoughts about this match, honestly. There's if you watch it, if you pay attention, maybe you can remember this, or if you ever happen to come across it again, you don't see a lot of interaction with Tony DeVito and
I made a note of that. It was all on you and Butcher, pretty much, the camera. Yeah.
That was 100% by design, and not because I wanted any kind of spotlight or I called dibs or because Abby wanted me. It's because when we were talking about this match in the back, and there's only so much you can talk about with a match like that, to be honest with you. But you do the right thing, and we're all, we're Homicide, DeVito, and myself would definitely, and I guess you could throw Chris Daniels in there. You definitely could. That sounded like a dick way to say that, but we would be the veterans of that locker room for sure. DeVito and I with the most experience for sure, and Homicide right up there. We as far as the full-time guys, there's other guys that have been around too. I'm not trying to leave anybody out, but so we would, we had some ideas of some things maybe we wanted to do, but of course we got the legend here, and it just, I'm sure you know that a little bit about that part of the business too.
Of course, yeah.
We're gonna, do the right thing, and what would you like to do tonight, sir? All those things, and I think we went over that match, or Abby went over that match like 3 or 4 times. And it was different it wasn't even close to the same every time. You know what I mean? So it wasn't real intricate. He's like, okay, we'll do this, and then I'll do this. Then maybe go grab this, and blah, blah, blah. Like, all right, cool. He says, yeah. So to go over it again, and it was completely different than what he just said the time before. So
really,
that's when which was, for something like that. And anyway, we're pretty experienced at this point anyway. I say that it was a big 8-year veteran, which I thought was, I thought I was, blah, 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 blah. I'm almost 27-year veteran now, and think that the 8-year veteran didn't know shit. But at any rate, we're like, all right, well, I guess we'll just see you out there. We'll see how this goes. We got a couple bullet points, which is, little side note. That's all the only way I work now is with bullet points, but so DeVito intentionally went to Homicide and said, okay, you and me, we're sticking together this whole goddamn thing, because I don't know what's going on. Let him kill Loc. That was 100%.
DeVito's a smart guy.
Yes. And there was a certain point in there where I thought for sure my death was imminent. But he wanted me to, you want me to go right into it, tell you kind of my thoughts on the match?
Please do.
He couldn't, it was hard for him to get in the ring, and I actually don't know how he finally did, to be honest with you, because my eyes weren't on him. But because it was hard for him to get in the ring, what he wanted me to do, we want us to jumpstart. So DeVito and Homicide take off whatever, and I'm going to go over and reach out for Abby, and he's going to pull me out from underneath. And opening spot, first thing in the match, I'm sure you saw it, stabs me in the head with the
pulls it out of his boot.
Yep.
Right to it.
First thing I take in the whole match is the fork, right? So I go down. It's, everybody knows what we do here. I get my gimmick, a little bit of business, come up, and he goes, I said, get your color. And I just had, and I thought,
not enough.
and he stabs me again, or time or two. And I always pack a spare. So, I went down, pulled out my spare, and I went, beep, 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 beep. And DeVito always picks on me for getting shitty color. But at this point, I could see it drip off my nose and on the ground. I don't know if I'm gushing, but it's dripping on the floor. We're off to the races now. I come back up to him. His exact words were, don't you got a blade? He said it just like that. I go, oh, well, I just threw away my spare, right? And very calmly, I said, seemed like a good idea at the time, but very calmly, I said, sir, because, he's the veteran, and I'm, this high speed, sir, how about you just take your fork and work it around in my cut a little bit? Which
how could this possibly end badly?
You never say, right? But
yeah,
but I've done that with people a million times. You work it a little bit. I'm not saying butcher me like a fish or anything like that.
That quite literally is his name, the Butcher. So I feel like you were just asking for it.
I should have, yeah, because that's what he did. It was like I could have heard the theme to Psycho right then. I'm like, you want to work that around my cut, sir, a little bit? Yeah, sure. Hey, Steve, you can still see the scar a little bit. And he got me, so I bled then. So I'm like, holy shit. You know, and shortly thereafter, he drags me around somewhere, and famous lines, famous words. Now, what would you say about this huge man with his boob fat hanging down to his knee, standing there in front of you, and he says, open your mouth and trust me.
Oh, no.
Yes, sir.
That's my pickup line too.
And he sticks his fork, which, you know, I bet you he doesn't, you know, sanitize that fork after every match or get a new one. Yeah. Sticks his fork under my tongue, and I'm selling like $1 million or trying to, you know, and so I'm like, holy shit. But, you know, I guess we had the people at that point. And so things go on like that. And like I said, we didn't have a whole shit ton that we talked about, but it was going very well, I thought, you know, you have to, if you're in like my position in that, in a match like that, you have to, of course, respect the veteran. I'm never going to hurt him. I'm never going to blah, 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 blah. But at the same time, this is what I do for a living. Okay. And as a shoot, you know, that's for a lot of my career, certainly, you know, not all of it, but it's been my only job. And if not, it's been still my life's work. Okay. Yeah. This ain't no hobby, I've always said. And so, whereas I would never, ever disrespect the veteran, I would never hurt him, I would never do anything. At some point, you have to tell yourself, and I always have, had to do that. I wrestled Dory Funk, you know, and it's kind of a no blood involved, but a similar story where I thought to myself consciously, well, what would I do if that wasn't this big legend over there? You know, because I mean, there's guys like, you know, there's the quote unquote names, and some people refer to me as that, you know, and I take that as an honor. But then there's legends, you know, like I've been lucky enough to be in there with Abby, been in there with Dusty Rhodes, be in there with Dory Funk, you know, and probably some others. But so we did a little spot where Homicide went to pick me up for the cop killer, and I flopped over, should have landed on my feet better, but didn't. And I gave him Saito suplex, dumped him on his head. And when I came up, Abby's just standing there in the corner resting. You know, I don't know where DeVito was. He's off selling something somewhere. Yeah. And that's where that moment hit me. I'm like, what would I do if this wasn't Abdullah the Butcher over there? And he's just standing there looking at me, and I'm in the ring by myself. I said, I'd waffle him with this fucking chair. And that's what I did. So I went over and I swung it at him safely, but all he does, swats it down and comes as close as he can to running after me with that fork. And you can hear the crowd audibly go, oh, because I thought I was dead. And if you look and you see me kind of scurrying to get away scared, there's no working involved in that. I thought he was coming after me too, which there's a lesson right there. And I tell that story a lot because, you know, he did a little something right there where the fans really thought he was mad and he was going to come kill me. So much so that I thought he was mad and he was going to come kill me. But then he got to me light as a feather, nothing, totally working those you know, so I was very thankful for that. And I'm like, man, I just learned something. You know, it's that little bit of, oh, let me just turn this on for a second. Like there's a difference between I'm working mad, and for a second I got them to think I was really mad and this guy's in trouble, and he still took care of me. And I think shortly thereafter we went home, and DeVito was nowhere to be found to help me. I don't know where he was, son of a bitch. But yeah, so that was always my I still, every time his name comes up or this night comes up, I tell those parts of those stories and have to listen to DeVito if we're together. So, and this dumbass told him to get his color with the fork, and I'm like, I didn't mean like that. But at the end of the
day, it worked, right? You got some color, just a little bit. I guess that's that's really interesting. Kind of, I guess this match kind of showed you like the value of taking initiative and kind of like, you know, listening to the crowd and kind of evolving the match, you know, beyond the bullet points maybe you had laid out before.
Sure. I mean, I try, you know, you always kind of try to work like that a little bit, but, you know, like I said, I can remember specifically because it was in the promo I told you about earlier that we would have filmed the show before this. Right. I remember like the opening line being, you know, after 8 years in the wrestling industry, you know, so that's how I know how long you know, where I was in my career at that point. But at that point still, especially, like that, the theme of our talk here today, some of the styles of the way the guys were working in those days, a lot of it, not all of it, but a lot of it had to be really planned out because they wanted to get their shit in. They wanted to be just so, and maybe they weren't experienced or confident enough to do it another way. Not all of them, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But I would still, talk a lot more than I do now. But something like that, when you're just fighting, I guess that's the one of the millions of things that I was lucky enough to learn in ECW. If you're doing those kinds of matches where there's a lot of brawling and a lot of fighting, you can't choreograph this shit, or you have to do what's there, because you don't know if that table's going to break the way you want it to, or you don't blah 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 blah, and you don't know when the crowd's ready for you to go another way. And again, not to get off on another tangent, but if you have everything so friggin' mapped out and the crowd's ready for you to do something else,
mm-hmm.
well, you got to be able to do something else, So, but at any rate, not to get on that tangent, but this match in particular, like I said, we went out there with no game plan or 4 game plans, depending on how you want to look at it. So,
yeah.
And it ended up being what it was, and I think it served its purpose really well. And I think that was my personal, mine and DeVito's, I think it was our first main event in the Ring of Honor. So
I believe so. Yeah.
Cool. And and it was with this guy that everybody was pretty excited that he was there. A legitimate legend. So, and and I also went into it with assuming that he was just going to guzzle us up. Which, if Homicide wasn't in there, I'm sure it would be all he
right.
Done. But, it was a fairly competitive match. So, I did, opening spot was getting stabbed in the brain, but,
I guess maybe in hindsight, maybe you could have built to the fork spot, but it's Abdullah the Butcher,
I respect the veteran. That's what he called.
Yeah. Don't you got a blade? That's hilarious to me.
Don't you got a blade? I can see it dripping off my nose. I'm like, I don't know how this is going to end, but I bet you I'm going to end up bleeding more than I am now.
man, after you taking me through that match and like kind of what went into it, like I think I need to go watch it again because I think I'll enjoy it more the second time. It's because watching this cold, not knowing any of this, it's like, man, this is kind of just, they're really just gonna have Abdullah the Butcher stab Loc for 15 minutes straight, and then that's the whole match. That's kind of what it really was, honestly. I mean, there were some spots at the end, and you have Homicide and the cop killer at the end, but ultimately this match is serving the purpose of Abdullah, but like you said, the legend's here. Let the legend do what the legend what made him a legend. I guess, I don't know, how old was he at this point, Abdullah?
Oh God, I don't even know. That'd be interesting to find out, but I would think he'd 50s or 60s maybe.
Yeah,
I don't have any idea.
But the age coupled with the fact that he's just a huge dude. Yeah, I mean, he's having a tough time moving around. Like you said, he can barely get in the ring. So I guess, there's not much else you can do with him. And I guess, the value of having that name maybe is worth it. And especially considering that this is also kind of the blow off, because you guys and Homicide had been feuding pretty much since the beginning of Ring of Honor. And this is kind of the blow off here. I believe it actually started with Homicide stabbing you with a fork. Am I correct?
It did. That's I always loved the booking there. And I'm kind of proud of my spot in that history. Whereas I was the first in-ring talent to walk through a Ring of Honor curtain ever.
Really?
Because I had to I was going to reprise my ECW gimmick, being the Extreme Official which tiny little background on that. I was a wrestler, had been my whole career, never refereed in my life, but I fell ass backwards into this cool character that wrestled and refereed in ECW, and pretty cool. So that was the idea. Was I was going to come in as a part of a tag team and feud with Homicide, and here's how we'll get there. So in order to do that, so it wasn't an angle alert that I was going to fight with Homicide later, I had to referee, just straight referee another match. So that ended up being the first match in Ring of Honor. Later on, it was Homicide's match, stabbed me with a fork, dumped me on my head with a cop killer. Scared shitless, by the way, before I took that move. Scared to death.
More so of the fork?
Way more than the fork. Because I'm like, if nothing else, I don't think he can get through my skull. Maybe he can.
Don't challenge him.
If he's trying to, I'm hoping he's not trying to. You know,
you never know, man.
But I can land on my head. You know, scared shitless. But and mind you, I met Homicide that day. And, well, no, he came to ECW a couple times, but you know, but so I'm like, boy, you know, so I was nervous taking that, but I got to tell you a little story about that. So it's totally on another tangent, but tying my my wrestling worlds together. We're in ECW. I'm doing the Extreme Official character, and I'm always fighting with Steve Corino a lot, always.
Right.
We're at some house show, and he's wrestling Tajiri. Tajiri lays him out on a table, and before he went up top to put him through it, just gives him a big overhand chop right in the stomach. I don't know why he would do that, but he did. And of course, it's a house show, so I lean into Steve and I go, "Sell that, bitch!" And I laugh to myself, and we go on along the thing. Fast forward, I don't know, 3 years later, Homicide stabs me in the head with a fork, first Ring of Honor show, drops me on my head as a cop killer. They stretcher me out. As soon as I get through the curtain, Steve Corino standing there. He goes, "Stop, stop, 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 stop." He leans over, I think, to check on me, and he goes, "Sell that, bitch!" And he got me back there. Perfect.
Man, he had been plotting that for years.
Yeah. So it was a nice little book ending that way. So that was the blow off to our feud. You can't get any higher than that. He brings in Abdullah the Butcher to be his partner, and it was the main event, and the baby faces went over, and that's wrestling. That was perfect. Yeah.
Who was better at stabbing you in the head with a fork, Homicide or Abdullah the Butcher?
Well,
the time old question.
Yeah, I guess, boy, if I had a nickel for every time somebody after that, right? I would say, well, Abby stabbed me for real, but I guess I kind of half-ass asked for it, right? I didn't. That's not what I meant.
Right.
But that's how it worked at the end of the day. There was no real shoot pain from Homicide, and it looked like there was, so I'm going to go with him.
Well, he only stabbed you once, right? Abdullah the Butcher had to have stabbed you at least 100 times.
I would think so. It's physically his only. He doesn't drop an elbow anymore, so it's physically his only move. And it ain't like he was letting me. You know, I wasn't doing a whole lot of tackle, drop down, leapfrog with him on my end. So So pretty much just eat this fork literally and take it to the brain. But
not a lot of chain wrestling in this match.
No, not a whole lot. Not a whole lot. No.
But man. So that main event that brings the show to a close. Honestly, in talking to you about this stuff, I almost have more of an appreciation for the show than I did going in, to talking about it with you. Ring of Honor at this point, I mean, they're nowhere near where they would ultimately become, but I think there is a lot of interesting stuff in these early days, and a lot of good stuff. Some not so good stuff, but a lot of great wrestling. Any other general thoughts on Ring of Honor during this time, or I guess your time in Ring of Honor in general?
Yeah, I mean, same with what you're saying. It's I would or to tie into what you're saying, a lot of good stuff, a lot of stuff with potential, a lot of stuff that's not good yet. But if you what's the hottest thing in wrestling right now? I mean, there's no debate. It's AEW, right? And you can say the same thing about them, and that the people that love it, they're so huge, so over the people that love it. And there's some people there that are genuinely great. And there's some people there that, and this is not bashing anybody, that aren't great yet. So, I mean, it's weird that that's playing out on national television. But they're over. But the company is, and there's the people who are there, and there's the people with the room to grow. And that's the same thing with Ring of Honor when you're talking about that. Yeah, you had Danielson versus Paul London. You had AJ Styles, who was as good as is almost as good then as he is now. When SATs was stuck out too. Yet some of the other guys are like, maybe they don't find their way yet, but someday they would, or maybe they didn't quite, but they had that chance because they had that great atmosphere to do it in. And I was so excited. I was excited about it from the end of show. I was excited for show one. By the end of show one, I thought, we talked about it early in this podcast, you knew you were a part of something special. And it became more than something special to me. And it was, I still, to this day, I have honor tattooed down my spine, the word honor. And it was because I was that guy, man. That company was everything to me. it was, as much as I love ECW and I romanticize ECW so much now as everyone does, you know, and looking back at how lucky I was to be there, being what my role was in Ring of Honor, as far as like, you know, again, 8 years in the business, but compared to those guys, considered an old guy. You know, I remember turning 30 when I was there, and then old, blah, you know, but
Right, yeah,
but
yeah.
you know, a couple of times, people that I respected a great deal referred to me as the Tommy Dreamer of Ring of Honor. Now, if you're a guy like me in ECW, that meant, you know, because Tommy Dreamer was the Tommy Dreamer to me, you know, and he was the guy that I asked about my match, or not just that, asked about, man, am I handling this situation right? Or how do I navigate the home life with the business, and or my mind's, you know, just being that constant type of thing that hopefully giving some type of positive energy to your coworkers, to your friends, you know, and being, and if I was that at all, I could have, you know, I tried so hard to be that guy now, and I'm way better at it because I'm older and I calm down. I don't drink as much and all those things, you know, so it meant the world to me because I wanted to be that guy for them. And you know, right down to, I helped build the Scramble cage thing, and years later, you'll keep watching, and eventually we have a nice entrance way with a diamond plate ramp and all that. I built that. I went down, you know, stuff like that.
Oh, really?
Out of the wrestling school to help work on that, and you know, and you know, Ring of Honor, you know, I said it before, Ring of Honor was everything to me in those days. I assumed that that it was going to be huge, that it was soon going to be considered, you know, if not competition to WWE, be viewed as another national company, at least to the degree that ECW was, and it did, and it was, and it is. Man, I was proud of that place. And a couple of years ago, whenever it was, when they sold out Madison Square Garden, like holy shit, from 400 people in the Murphy Rec Center.
Right.
Man,
that's
amazing. That place was everything to me. Everything.
Yeah, no, I believe it. Yeah, you definitely, as a fan just watching it, you definitely get a sense of the camaraderie amongst everybody working there. And it's cool that you're such like an instrumental, whether it's, you know, you're working the Carnage Crew or building the ramps, whatever it is, like, and you said you worked as an agent too. So that's really cool that you were such a pivotal part of that, because, you know, the early days of Ring of Honor, even, you know, mid 2000s, early 2000s, that's some of the best, right? People still talk about matches that happened during that time period. And you look at WWE, AEW, like their rosters are filled with guys from that era that made their names in Ring of Honor. So I think it's a testament to the quality that the company was able to provide the fans. And it's in a time period where, like, you know, the Monday Night Wars were over. It felt like wrestling was kind of in a lull, but Ring of Honor was there to create a whole different thing, bringing people from all over the world, Japan and Britain, all over the US. So definitely a unique feel in 2002, but it's always been one of my favorite companies to watch, for sure.
Yeah, man. It was one of, obviously, you know, one of my favorite companies to ever work for. You know, it was a blessing. I feel very lucky. You know, you mentioned it's cool to hear and to talk about some of the cool things I got to do there and be a part of, and kind of little things on my resume. But, you know, I also need to be clear that I wish I could have made more of that too. You know, honestly, you know, it was, you know, not to kind of wrap things up on a downer note, but, you know, when I say things like I was the first agent there, I could have done better with it. If I knew then what I knew now, if I was a little bit more mature, and by that, I mean, not, you know, I was going through divorce at that time, and I still wanted to be a star myself, and blah, 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 blah. So maybe I could have even dove further into helping other people and stuff like that, you know. But so if you see me now, or if you are at a show with me now, or share a dressing room with me, and you know, you see guys asking me to watch their match, or anything, just talking about the business, or trying to be, it's because I got a taste of it there, and after that in my career. But I love being that guy that can be helpful, and that maybe you can go on further and say, hey man, years ago, Loc told me this is a great little piece of advice, or gave me this story, or told me about this thing in the ring, or even if it's just like a little bit of made me feel better about the business for a minute when I was doubting myself or something like that. And if I get to do that for folks, then after someday I won't be able to wrestle again. I don't anymore. I don't know when that's going to be. I keep pushing it back. I would say, for a long time, I said, well, when I turn 50, that'll be in even 30 years now. And now I can tell you what, I just turned 47 last Friday, and there's no chance I'm going to be done at 50. Unless something, God forbid, happens to my body. I just can't imagine this not being part of my life. But if, eventually I assume I'm going to die. I think probably for sure. But if folks can ever say, watch a match like you just watched or whatever, or mainly people that I share dressing rooms with, or students of mine, and if they have maybe a little good story or a little piece of advice or a little bit of help, I always get to say, well, I get to live forever that way, because, if I give you help with your match or a little bit of advice or blah, 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 and then you give that to somebody else someday, and then he does to somebody else someday, or she, and it's, man, we just keep, I always say we're very lucky. I'm very blessed and lucky to have been a part of the business as long as I have been. And as much as I honestly feel like I worked my ass off and paid my dues in ECW and to earn a spot there, there's a million other guys that would have wanted to, right. So I was very lucky, and probably a lot of, every one of them's taller than me, and probably a lot of them, were as talented or more talented than I was. And then same thing with Ring of Honor, it could have, I worked my ass off for it, but I was also very lucky. And I never don't feel blessed when I get to have conversations like this about some of the cool stuff I got to do all those years ago.
Right. Yeah. Your mark will always be on the business, man, whether it's ECW, Ring of Honor. You said you're working today. You have a seminar, you have a school, right?
Yeah.
Is that what you said?
School. Yeah. I have school, and I just, and once in a while I'll do little seminars before, when I come to town and get there early or whatever, we'll set some stuff up with, wherever I am wrestling that weekend type of thing. But, I have a school called the Fighting Arts Pro Wrestling Institute. If anybody wants to check that out on Facebook, or if they just look for me, if you search HC Loc on Facebook, it'll come up. Yeah. I don't know how to change the, it says Matt Knowles, my shoot name, but it's got HC Loc in the parentheses. And Instagram, it's at HC Loc 1, and Twitter, it's at HC Loc 1. And if anybody wants to check it out or see what I'm up to, or wants to say hi, or wants to tell me you think I suck, that's cool too. Or want a little help with anything I can help you with in this old wrestling world, that's what I'm here for, and I love to do it.
Hell yeah. Well, thank you so much, Loc. It's been a pleasure talking to you about Ring of Honor and just wrestling in general. Like I said, going through this, I honestly wasn't too familiar with you going into it, but you're quickly Carnage Crew stuff becoming one of my favorites, especially after talking today. Definitely one of my favorites, and great follow on social media as well. So I appreciate you making the time to come on here and talk a little wrestling with me.
Thanks, man. It was a lot of fun. Thank you for having me, and pick out another cool Carnage Crew match one of these days. We'll do it again, maybe.
Yes, sir. Open your mouth and trust me, he says. Oh, God, man. Once again, thank you to HC Loc. Awesome time talking to him about Night of the Butcher 2002 and Ring of Honor and wrestling as a whole. Such a good time with Loc. Go check him out on Twitter and Instagram at HC Loc 1. Check out his school as well, as he mentioned. All of the stuff regarding HC Loc. He's still out there working as well, so go check out everything that he's doing. Really good dude. Awesome performer. Yeah, and check out all my episodes of The Apron Bump. You can go to apronbump.com for all my full episodes. If you enjoy these Ring of Honor reviews, maybe you're just jumping in, maybe you're a new listener, you can go to apronbump.com, go to the episodes tab at the top, select ROH, and that'll bring you to all of my Ring of Honor reviews that I've done thus far, going in chronological order from the very beginning and up to where we are now. So really, really fun time talking about Ring of Honor. Got a really special show for my next ROH review, Final Battle. That'll be a really good one as well. So make sure you subscribe. Make sure you don't miss that. And subscribe to my YouTube. Subscribe to my Chatterbait. Is that still a thing? I don't know. But that's all I got for you guys today. Thank you guys so much for listening. Make sure to wash your forks before you stick them in other people's mouths. I'm hard.
Talk around and disregard it. Strip you off the ground, show you what heart is. Standing strong and proud, nothing can knock it. Let's get it started. It's the hardest. Talk around and disregard it. Strip you off the ground, show you what heart is. Standing strong and proud, nothing can